Hi guys, the last few weeks we have been adding some new things to Erebus and fixing bugs. There are a bunch of things to see. Let's get on with it. You may have seen the stream we made trying to port the game to Godot 4. The version of Dialogic in Godot 4 is in alpha and has a lot of problems. Also, we could not open the maps in Godot 4 because of some incompatibility of the tile maps. For these reasons, we decided to stay on Godot 3.5 while the situation does not improve.
This devlog will not be as structured as the last one, so no sections will be separated. However, it will be a more organic and varied devlog instead.
The biggest thing we added is a leveling system for the weapon types. The weapon types level up as you use them, from 0 to 100 for melee and ranged weapons, and from 0 to 10 for throwables. This way, the more you use a particular weapon type, his stats will be better. The craft price of the corresponding weapon type will be reduced a little for each level. That's one improvement all the weapon types have in common, but there are others. The melee weapons will deal more damage and reduce the stamina cost of the special attack. The ranged weapons will have less recoil and dispersion and increased max ammo, along other things. And the throwable weapons will have a greater carry capacity and deal more damage, if they are not explosive, like the shurikens, since his damage could depend on your ability to throw them. The explosive throwables, like grenades, will always deal the same amount of damage. Even if you launch the grenade with more skill, the explosion does not change.
We are also working on adding more guns and new features depending on every gun mechanics, like the ammo is displayed on a transparent magazine. And remember the last devlog when talking about weapon overheating? Now you have to watch it even more because the fire rate will be decreased if the weapon overheats so much. Also, we are adding and improving gunplay effects, like weapon smoke trails, that will show more chaotic battles. The sniper and scopes will also use shaders that magnifies the zooming out camera, giving a very nice and realistic effect. But this feature is still in development and we can expect some visual bugs and glitches that we have to resolve later on. And one of the biggest issues when we use zoom out on a sniper is that the object scaled down resolution and it looked very distorted. And with some minor adjustment we fixed not only that thing, but also the pixel distortion when you rotate some elements like weapons. Now it can be displayed nice in all 360 degrees. When you move with heavy weapons, the movement velocity penalty was very tough. Considering that we thought of heavyweight weapon alternative, we implemented that the rotation velocity on weapon depends on its weight itself. So with this, we balanced the movement penalty to not to be too aggressive. Now lighter weapons will move almost immediately to the cursor, while heavier weapons will do it slower. A problem we have is the possibility of shooting through walls. If the player has a very long weapon like a sniper or some rifle, how do we avoid him being able to shoot enemies behind a wall? We use a raycast that detects walls. If there is a wall in front of the weapon will rotate and you won't be able to shoot. With this, long weapons are no longer a problem. That was a huge problem in the early concept phase because how do we do a close quarter scenario? No, we can. Expect many varied situations in Erebus from now on. It's worth mentioning once again that Erebus will feature a lot of weapons, and we are caring even about the stats related to each chapter of the campaign. And yes, we'll have flamethrowers too. The aim of this is that you will feel the evolving technology while you are playing the game. If you like an early game weapon, don't worry, we are balancing the game for this. And if you found a weapon that you like and you don't want to change it and using all the playthrough, you can do it without fear to use obsolete weapons. and with more weapons, more enemies will appear. We are working not only on reskins of the same enemy behavior, but we are adding more layers of dynamic difficulties to make every enemy unique also. In Erebus, we are taking a lot of time to let the ideas fly and creativity takes place. So this time the new enemy will be spreading all the scene around with its disgusting acid secretions, and it will do all on its hands to avoid our attacks. Maybe one will not so difficult to fight, right? But what about 3 of them? What about if you have to avoid other enemies also? That is the kind of challenge we want the player to confront. And along with the acid, we made an acid status effect. When the player steps on acid, the acid status starts to fill. When it fills, you receive acid damage, and the damage does not stop until you leave the acid. To indicate that the player is receiving acid damage, we made a custom texture for the health bar, and we tint the player green. In the future, we plan to add other status effects like fire and freezing. Some of the details added was the art of the new scenario. Part of the Chapter 1 and aiming to make more representative elements, of course we want to make a very detailed world with many interesting and unique places to visit. So check this hat. By the way, now you can also craft throwable weapons at the workshop after discovering them. We have added a new tab especially for them.
Another cool feature we added is the ability for the shurikens to collide and bounce with the wall. To make the shuriken bounce in the right direction, we need the normal vector of the collision, but it seems you can jet it with an area 2D. To jet the normal, I create a raycast at the moment of the collision, and I make it point to the direction the shuriken was going. With the collision of the raycast, we can jet the normal. Also, they will disappear if you throw them in the water, and you will hear a splash sound. The weapons and armors also have the same effect. Now, the player has 4 different stats: Strength, Agility, Luck, and Intelligence. These stats appear on the status tab of the inventory. For the moment, they don't have much functionality yet, but we will work on them in the future. You will be able to increase these stats as you progress in the game, and they will be useful in different situations. For example, a Strength will allow you to carry heavier weapons, and Intelligence will open special dialogue options. We are aware that you may not know self-control, or it can be difficult to remember. That's why we added an option to enable help pop-ups. For the moment, there is only one, a pop-up that tells you how to drop throwables and weapons. This pop-up only appears when you try to pick up a weapon and your inventory is full. Of course, these informative pop-ups can be annoying for experienced players. That's why we added an option to disable them. You have a trunk to store weapons, but what about the ammo and steam packs? Now, there is a new tab to store them, so you can store some ammo and steam packs for later use when you reach the inventory maximum capacity size. It's also useful for weapons with a massive magazine. With the initial maximum inventory ammo, you won't be able to fill them, but if you add the ammo you may have stored in the trunk, then you will fill the magazine. This sort of weapons can be useful in a boss fight, for example. I also replaced the splash screen add-on we were using with a system I implemented myself. I did a tutorial about it if you are interested. The add-on we were using was too complex and it needed another add-on for the animations we didn't use anywhere else, since the twin and animator player are good enough. The splash screen I implemented can be skipped easily and is centered automatically. Also, you can create splash screens with any controls. We have also fixed a lot of bugs and added some minor things to make the game better. I'm not going over all of them because there are far too many, but let's check some. The enemies now have a screen enabler node that allows them to disable their state machine and all their process and physics process when they are far off the screen. That is useful with big maps where we have like 100 or more enemies and we don't want them to use CPU when they are not close to the player to avoid performance problems. We also improved the UI of the trunk, the wardrobe, and the workshop, adding a title and an icon. We have also been improving the controller support. Now you can navigate the UI of the trunk and the work table with the controller. It's nice to see how the game progresses. I hope you enjoyed the devlog. You can help us develop it by becoming a Patreon. Check the description for more info. That's all for this devlog. See you in the next one.